February was a pretty successful reading month for me. I did end up reading less than I read in January, but there are 2 less days in the month of February than there were in January, and I didn't have the first week of February on holidays like I did in January. So, you know, a couple of excuses why. But I only read 1 less book. I still read 6 books in February, which I'm pretty happy with. And most of them I rated pretty well. I did have 1 2-star read and 1 soft DNF. Overall, pretty good. So, let's have a look through, have a read through, have a review of all the books that I read in February of 2024. First up is one that I do not have physically. Actually, the first 2 I don't have physically. The first one was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, which I borrowed as an ebook from the library, which is great. I'm very happy to be using my library and reading an ebook, which I don't often read ebooks. So that was good. The book itself, less good. I'm sure most people know about Marie Kondo and the KonMari method of cleaning now, probably mostly from the Netflix show. She's the Sparks Joy person. Does it spark joy? 1, I'm trying to read like 5 non-fiction books this year, and 2, I'm also trying to go through and declutter a big portion of my house this year. So I figured that would be a good way to start off my year, get myself a little bit of inspiration, a bit of a direction on how to do this whole tidying up sort of thing. But I did not enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. I gave it 2 because the concept itself I think is solid, and I do quite like the deciding whether or not things make you happy and getting rid of the things that don't, and you know, some of the basic concepts of the method in general. But the rest of it, not so much. I'll read you a couple of the notes that I made and a couple of the quotes that I recorded while I was reading through this. The first one is just that she doesn't understand people that don't enjoy cleaning. She wants you to do everything at one time, like tidy your entire house in one go. Do not stop at all. Like, I don't want to spend a weekend. Would it even, like, could I even do it in a weekend? I feel like I would need more than a weekend. I'd have to take time off work to tidy my house for 4 days straight or something ridiculous. Like, I would burn out on both the cleaning and then the having to go back to work immediately after without having had a weekend concept. She also doesn't want you to listen to any music or watch TV while you are doing this, because that will just break your concentration. You can't have that. You can maybe play classical music if you really need something, but what you should really do, according to Marie Kondo, to, you know, keep yourself energized and not getting distracted and bored, is to tap into the power in the atmosphere. Yes, that'll fix it. She also wants you to start early in the morning, basically just for the vibes. And she thinks that as long as you are choosing clothes that give you pleasure, you'll be left with the amount that you need. So basically, I am going to have no underwear and a bunch of clothes that don't fit me anymore left in my closet if I just go on the Sparks Joy theory. Like, there's so much more elements to this. There's things that she says like, oh, if there's a book that you haven't read that you keep saying you'll get to but you never get to, just get rid of it. And then if you decide you want to read it later, if you realize that actually you really do want to read it, just go out and buy it again. Like, who has the money to go out and buy another book that they just donated or threw in the bin? Anyway, I am passionately annoyed at this book. But I did give it 2 stars because the basics of the concept, I think, are solid, and I will be using some of the general concept to declutter my house, but I will be doing like 1 decluttering project a month over the next 12 months is my plan. So I definitely won't be committing to the KonMari method. But you know, like, I'm glad I've read it. You know, I can say I've done it, so there's that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. That's a 2-star read for me. So that was my lowest rated book for the month, which I got out of the way early. So that's nice. I finished that on the 3rd of February. The next one I read was In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This one I also don't have physically. I did borrow the book from the library, but I borrowed a physical book, not an ebook for this one. So this was the story of, let me check for names. Victor the human lives with this group of robots, and they've basically become a family over the years, and one of them gets taken by the, I guess, like robot authorities and taken back to this big city full of robots, and so they have to go on a quest across America, the futuristic dystopian America in which they now live, which robots rule the world apparently. And yeah, they have to go and find their family member who was taken. It's a very good book, a very well written book. I only gave it 3 stars. It was just a bit slow for me, and there are a few things that I didn't love about it. The one thing that I really hate in books is when the books don't give you any opportunity whatsoever to figure out something that's happening. They just tell you something as fact, and then it turns out later on that that thing was not actually a fact. And so you just kind of don't have an opportunity to try to figure something out. That annoys me. I really don't like that in a book. So that happened, which I didn't love. The other thing that I didn't really enjoy was some parts around the sexuality of Victor, our main character. He is described very early on as being asexual, and the other robots sort of start making some jokes at various points and comments in some ways, which at first it's like, oh yeah, they made a comment, he said don't do that, they said okay, fine, and moved on. But they kept doing it. Like, it reached a point where that was becoming harassment in some ways, but they really thought it was a joke. The robots were really treating it as a joke, but Victor was not having a good time, and that just was not enjoyable for me. They did, like, that happened pretty early on, and they did remove that throughout the rest of the book, so it wasn't a big issue, but it was just like a little thing that I was just like, okay, that's enough now. Can we please stop harassing the poor, uncomfortable human boy? So yeah, that was In the Lives of Puppets. I think it was pretty good. It was very well written. I definitely want to try some more TJ Klune, but I didn't love the pace. A bit slow. It really picked up in like the last third, but the rest of it was really quite slow and meandering, which is very nice. Built a very nice story, but I am kind of learning in this month particularly, now that I think about it, that I do quite enjoy a fast-paced sort of read. That's how I feel about that. I don't know if I will actually enjoy other TJ Klunes for the exact same reason, but there's a few that I have heard come up which are very well received books written by TJ Klune. So maybe I will give them a go, maybe I won't, I don't know. We will find out. That was one of the Goodreads winners from 2023. I am trying to read through all of the fiction Goodreads winners from 2023 throughout the first half of this year. So that was one of those. I had to read that regardless. And yeah, I think it was pretty good. Solid book. Now we get into the books that I actually have. Next up, we have A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Maas? I never know how you pronounce her name. But we have that. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses in like mid last year. I thought it was alright. Didn't love it. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was pretty middle of the road for me. And I've heard a lot of people saying that this one is much better. If you didn't love ACOTAR, maybe still try this one. So I finally got around to it. I finally got around to reading it. I wasn't like really invested in trying to read it because the first one was meh. But everyone is telling the truth. This one is much, much better. So much better. I gave it 4 stars. But we'll come back to that in a minute. This is the continuation of Feyre's story. So Court of Thorns and Roses follows the human Feyre who is taken across the wall into the Fey lands and has to learn about the Fey to begin with and how to survive this Fey world, particularly as a weak human who has no power and can do nothing to stop the fairies. I won't say much more than that because spoilers, but yeah, this one really was a massive improvement on ACOTAR. Really enjoyed it. This one really builds on the found family that I hear about being part of this series, which I didn't really experience in ACOTAR and was a little bit confused by, but it comes through very strongly in this one. Love all of the new characters that are introduced or brought to light more in this book. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I only gave it 4 stars. Can I explain why I'm not giving it 5 stars? Not really. When I thought to myself upon finishing this book, do I give it 4 stars? Or maybe I give it 5 stars. The idea of giving it 5 stars just didn't sit right with me. So I gave it 4 stars. I think it's still just the basic concept, the same thing that I've been having with a lot of these fantasy, romantasy books that I've been reading over the last few months, which is just that it just doesn't have the same depth to it. I don't love reading the sex scenes. It's just not for me, you know? But I know it's the way that things are going these days, so that's just how it is. And I did give 4.5 stars, which is the same, so why did I give 4.5 stars and this one only 4 stars? I don't know. It could have just been my mood at the time, let's be honest. But I did really enjoy this one, much better than ACOTAR. Highly recommend giving this one a go if you read ACOTAR and were like, enjoyed it but didn't love it. Definitely recommend continuing the series. If you read ACOTAR and hated it, don't bother. It doesn't improve that much. It doesn't change the entire structure of the concept of what these books are. So yeah, if you didn't enjoy the first one, I wouldn't recommend continuing, but if you thought it was okay, highly recommend continuing this one. So that was Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which had 4 stars. I finished that one on the 11th of February, so we're still pretty early in the month, but we've got a few more books to go. Next up we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This again is not one of the Goodreads winners from 2023, but the Housemaid's Secret, which is the sequel to this one, was the winner, so I had to read this one first. I'll be reading The Housemaid's Secret in the coming months, hopefully, in theory. But this follows a woman who has been in jail for the past 15 years or something like that. She's still very young. She went into jail when she was 16 or 17. The world's changed a lot in the last few years. She has grown up but hasn't really had the opportunity to experience the world. But basically she has to try and get a job, and obviously it is hard to get a job as a convicted felon. Previously convicted felon? I don't know what the word is. How do I say this? Anyway, she's struggling to find a job, so she ends up finding a job as a housemaid for the Winchester family. Obviously very rich, very fancy, and the mum, the wife, is your sort of typical movie characterized pop culture style rich housewife treating her maid badly. She's a little bit crazy, really back and forth on a lot of things, claims she doesn't say things that she did, claims that she did tell her things that she definitely didn't. So this is a horror book about, this girl moving into this house and having this lady going a little bit crazy at her. I actually really enjoyed this book. It was very good. It's a very quick read, very short book. I gave it 4 stars overall. Very enjoyable, very entertaining. I was a little bit disappointed by the main twist. It happened about halfway through the book and I wasn't super surprised by it. I've heard a lot of people talk about how great the twist was and how amazing and unpredictable it was, but it wasn't really that unpredictable and amazing, but it was good. It was a very enjoyable book. I really liked it. One of the things that I didn't like about this is it does the thing where on the blurb it doesn't actually tell you the truth of what happens in the book, which is not a big deal because obviously it was still a good book and it still told me enough to make me pick up the book to enjoy the book. And it's only a teeny tiny little thing that's not quite a truth on the back of it, but just tell the truth in your blurbs. It's not even really a lie, but it's not quite the truth. It's a little bit misleading in the blurb, and I don't like that. So, and there were just other things that were not quite perfect in my opinion of it, and I'm a little bit concerned about how the continuation of this series is going to go. It will be interesting to read how the second book plays out. similar enough to be considered a sequel, but different enough to be different. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I really enjoyed this one. This was 4 stars for The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. The next book that I finished was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is my first Brandon Sanderson book, which is a little bit wild considering I am a big fantasy reader and he has like 60 fantasy books and is probably the biggest fantasy writer. I don't know if that's true, but he has a lot of books and he releases books very quickly and he's been around for quite a while. So it's a bit surprising that I haven't read any, but this was my first Brandon Sanderson, and this follows 3 people. We've got 3 different POVs in this one. First is Serene, who comes into this country she's engaged to the Prince of Arelon, so she travels to Arelon. By the time she gets there, it turns out the prince has died, but part of her marriage contract means that when the prince died, she instantly became his wife. So she is now a princess of this country that she's never been to. But she is a very smart, very strong female character with a big political mind. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that all of this happens to her. She's not like a scared little princess who ends up in this world and is terrified and doesn't know what to do. She knows what she's doing. She's manipulating everybody. She's fantastic. And yeah, she takes on this country and she shows up and she tries to fix it. So that is Serene's story. We also have Hrathen, who is a priest of the religion that is on a mission to take over the world with its religion, which I guess is kind of a lot of religions' goals, now that I think about it. But he works for this country that is, you know, the religion is the country. It's one and the same. He comes here to try to convert the country before his boss, the big High Lord, King, whatever he is of their country, who speaks directly to their god, is going to send the armies in to just wipe out the country. So he's here to try and convert the country before that happens. And finally, we have the prince, who is allegedly dead, but actually he's not dead. He was turned into an Elantrian to move into the city of Elantris. The Elantrians used to be gods in this world, but something happened 10 years ago, and now instead of being gods, they're just kind of dead and shriveled up and gross. Like, they're not actually dead, obviously. They're kind of alive, but their hearts don't beat. They don't need to eat food, but they do feel hunger, and any pain that they have lasts forever. No injuries that they get ever heal. So he is one of them, and he is on a mission to make Elantris great again. And he is building new Elantris inside of Elantris, trying to make everybody's lives better and fix everything. So it's their 3 lives and how they're all living in either the one city or Elantris, which is very, very close to the capital city of Kay. Like, it's a 2-minute walk between the two. Very close together. So yeah, they're all living there, very close together. All of the political turmoil that's going on in this country, in the neighboring countries, a whole bunch of stuff going on. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. Again, can't 100% explain what it is that didn't give it 5 stars, and I think part of it is the pacing. It was a little slow. Like, it definitely wasn't as slow as in Lives of Puppets, obviously, because we've given it 4 stars, not 3 stars. And having the sort of jumping back and forth between the stories is very helpful, because sometimes there wasn't as much happening in someone's storyline, but other storylines were more exciting. But they did very strictly follow progression through each point of view. We had each point of view in order throughout the first 2/3 of the book, with only like a couple of little crossover bits. I don't have much more to say about what it was that held it back from being 5 stars. It also sort of, at the end, some things happened that I wasn't quite expecting, which is a little bit sad, but without trying to spoil anything. But really enjoyed it, 4 stars, and looking forward to reading more Brandon Sanderson. I think I'm going to start Mistborn as the next Brandon Sanderson. I don't know when that will be. Depends on how my TBR jar prompts come out. But yeah, I'll start Mistborn as my next Brando Sando series. For now, we have finished Elantris, and I'm glad that I kicked it off. If anyone is curious, I think this was a really good book to start with for Brandon Sanderson. if you don't know where to jump into the universe. Obviously I haven't read the rest of his stuff, so I don't know for sure one way or the other. But so far this has treated me very well as my starting point. It is a standalone book. I think there are a couple of like novellas, side bits to go in with this book, but it can stand alone. You can definitely read it on its own and you don't feel any need to find any sort of continuing story. It all wraps itself up very nicely. It was also his first released book. And he says in the back there's some like interview author discussion parts where he said that Elantris was the first time that he thought about the Cosmere as like a whole thing. I think he'd already written the start of Mistborn and possibly also Warbreaker. He might have already written the first book of both of those, and I think they were due to be published potentially soon, but this was the first one that actually published and released. And yeah, writing this one was the first time that he really started thinking about the Cosmere and the entire world and how everything was going to link together. So surely this doesn't have too much that you miss out on by not having read any of the other Cosmere novels. So yeah, I think this was a really good starting point if anyone else is wanting to get into the Brandon Sanderson universe. Would recommend. And the last book that I finished in February was Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life by Brian Lee O'Malley. This is a graphic novel following Scott Pilgrim, a 24-year-old living in Canada who initially is dating a high school girl. Very awkward. He's initially dating a high school girl, but then he sees this other lovely lady with some fun coloured hair who he decides he's now in love with and has to try to figure out how to do that and be with her instead of his high school girlfriend, but he's too scared to break up with his high school girlfriend. Anyway, it's a very silly comic. We just finished watching the Netflix animated series of Scott Pilgrim. I've seen the Scott Pilgrim movie a few years ago now, but really enjoyed the movie, really enjoyed the series, so I thought I would give the graphic novel, comic books, whatever you want to call these, a go. But it's a very short little book. I think it took me about an hour to read this entire thing, so that was a very, very quick read, and I gave it 4 stars. It was a lot of fun. I really like the animations, the story, the silliness. It is all very fun, but it is just like a really short 1 hour comic, silly novel. So couldn't really be 5 stars, but it was 4 stars. Really enjoyed that one. That is all of the books that I finished in February. Now the soft DNF that I mentioned was The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. Again, it's a pacing issue. It was just so slow and I just wasn't in the mood for that. I'm not like a super mood reader, but obviously there are still some times that I pick up a book and just go, I'm just not feeling it. I do want to try to finish it at some point because I don't like leaving things unfinished. I like knowing things. I like knowing how things end, and there's so much up in the air from this book and the last book. Well, there's a few things up in the air. I did just reach a chapter that I would be pretty excited to read, so hopefully I'll be able to pick this one up again sometime in the next couple of months. I don't want to leave it too long because then I'll have to actually start the book again. I'd like to pick it up again at some point, but I don't know. We will see. That was The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. And I did finish Scott Pilgrim on the 25th of February, so I did have a few days left over to do something with. For a couple of those days I read some of the Atlas Paradox, but after that I decided I would head to the bookshop, buy one of the books that are on my TBR for March, and while I was there I figured I would pick up A Court of Wings and Ruin. Just a short read, you know, to carry me over. Definitely not a short read, but I was also reading through the challenges that I'm trying to complete throughout the year. One of the ones that I have, I'll show you my progress on those in a minute, but one of them for March wants me to read a book that is neither the first nor the last in a series, and every book that ended up on my March TBR is either the first or the last, or just not in a series. So I grabbed A Court of Wings and Ruin just to carry me through to the end of February and then hopefully finish pretty early on in March. It's currently the 2nd of March and I am 2/3 of the way through this, 3/5. I don't know how to fraction, somewhere around there. And I'm really enjoying it. It's a whole lot of fun. Pretty similar in enjoyment to Court of Mist and Fury. Not quite as good because they're already on the good path, you know. It's just a continuation of what was good in Court of Mist and Fury, whereas Court of Mist and Fury really like shook up the status versus ACOTAR. So yeah, still really enjoying it. Very good, and I'm hoping to finish that within the next few days to count towards my challenge for 2024. So on that note, I need to collect some things to tell you guys about how I'm doing with my challenges for this year. Okay, so as far as my February TBR from my TBR jar and my TBR video, check out if you are interested. You can also check out my March TBR that came out recently, last week. So as far as my February TBR was concerned, there were only 2 that I missed. One was the Atlas Paradox, which I mentioned I did start but haven't finished, and the other was The Outsider, which actually managed to make it directly onto my March TBR from my prompt jars. So we'll be trying for that one again in March. It is one of the ones I have to read for my Goodreads winners concept. So hopefully we can get to that one next month. Now for the Dimmicks reading challenge, I added a couple to this. New Beginnings, a book to motivate you for the year ahead, or perhaps the first book in a series, which I used the life-changing magic of tidying up. As I said, I was hoping for some inspiration for my cleaning journey for the year. Didn't necessarily go that way, but that's what I was hoping for. And I also got Stacks on the Beach, which is Savor the Warmer Season with a sizzling summer read. I put the Housemaid on for that. I don't really know what counts as a sizzling summer read, but I figured like a light thriller horror type book, because it's not that bad. It's not that scary. Let's be clear. But it is, you know, in that genre. I figured that would work pretty well for a sizzling summer read, and that is the only extra ones that I added. So I still have Local Flavor and Travel Bug left to complete in March. So hopefully we get to those this month. But other than that, we're doing pretty well. This is a Jan to March challenge, so if I don't finish them next month, I've technically failed. So fingers crossed on that. Next up, we have the QBD reading challenge for 2024, which I don't have a physical copy of, but let me check my list. So I will chuck the list up one of these sides, whichever side looks better on editing. So I added In-Flight Entertainment, which is a book adapted to film, for which I used Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life. As I said, watched the movie a few years ago, really enjoyed it, and it is also now a TV series, so, you know, kind of double effect there. I also got Hot New Destination, which was a debut novel, which I used Elantris. It's not exactly a hot new destination in 2024, but it was his debut novel, so I'm counting it. And then I added Flying Proud, an LGBTQ plus book I used in The Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Very clearly has asexual and also same sex, same gender romance going on. So, and then I also had Visit Somewhere on the bucket TBR list, which I used A Court of Mist and Fury because that was on my February TBR. So yes, that is the QBD challenge. The finally one that I am doing is, I think, the most fun one, which is the Adventures in Aldea. Adventures in Aldea? Aldea? I think that's what it's called, Adventures in Aldea. You can check out her YouTube channel. She has like a whole RPG that goes along with this. You don't have to do the RPG. I'm not doing the RPG. I'm just doing the reading challenge. But it's like a choose your own adventure path line situation. So for February, I used Court of Mist and Fury again as a... So we chose to go towards and fight an animated gargoyle, which meant I had to read a book with non-human characters. Court of Mist and Fury is almost entirely fae characters and fairies and other various creatures in that aspect. So yes, that was that. I probably could have used it for the other option as well, which would have been a book 100 pages longer than your average. I don't really know what my average is, so this just felt like the more definite, accurate option. So yeah, you can see I followed that part there. And then finally in March is where we have the issue of having to read a book that is neither the first nor the last in a series. So if I can finish this lovely book here in the next couple of days, I mean, I have the entire month to finish it, theoretically, but I'm going to try to finish that in the next couple of days. That is how I'm doing with my challenges after my February reading. So I think I'm doing pretty well overall. I think the QBD list is going quite well. What am I total up to? Yeah, I'm nearly halfway through the QBD reading challenge already, and we're only 2 months into the year. But the ones that I am missing are the ones that are going to be harder to do. So we'll see how this goes, but I'm looking forward to reading through a bunch of books in the coming months. I don't know where I'm going with this, but that was all of the books that I read in February of this year. I don't actually know what I'm doing, what video is coming out next week, but there's going to be more booktube content coming in the next few weeks. If you guys want to see my March TBR, like I said, that one came out last week, so you can check that out and come by towards the end of March, start of April for an update on how all of those books went. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back next week with more of something, whatever that may be. Bye!